In America, if you have enough influence, you will never get sent to prison. Like this guy from the DuPont family that R-worded his own daughter. And if for some reason you do get sent to prison because you weren't able to buy off the judge or something, you're not going to be staying in prison for very long. But what happens if you have money but you don't have influence? What if you're a rich guy that the powers that be don't like? A rich guy like Jordan Belfort, the real Wolf of Wall Street. If you remember from the movie, Jordan Belfort made his money by screwing over rich people by selling them penny stocks. He wasn't screwing over poor people, and that was his fatal mistake. You see, there were plenty of people committing the same exact crime as Jordan Belfort, except he was the only one doing it against the rich, and that was his downfall. He didn't have influence. No, he was screwing over the people with the influence. He was screwing over people that were connected with the politicians, the justice system, and that's why he got taken down. But lucky for him, Jordan Belfort still had money. So he didn't have to stay in the regular prison with the mere peasants. No, he was able to stay in a luxury prison. That scene at the end of the Wolf of Wall Street movie of him enjoying tennis in a prison that looks like a country club? Yeah, that was not an exaggeration. Jordan Belfort described prison as quote a boys club and quote totally mellow. He had Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong as his bunkmate.
When I went into jail, my bunkmate turned out was Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong. That was just
No way.
Yeah, my luck.
Wow.
What?
Yeah. Wow.
Wait, sorry, he was your what? He was your what? Your bunkmate?
We shared a bunk.
Was Tommy Chong?
Yes.
Quote, I played tennis 3 hours a day and I'd write for maybe 12, end quotes. And here's the thing, Jordan Belfort is far from the first rich person to pay for a more luxurious prison sentence. You see, luxury prisons are a very real thing. It's baked into the American justice system, and you're not gonna believe how deep it runs. Stay dangerous, subscribe for more, and this is an inside look at the luxury prisons of the rich and famous. If you want to get rich like these people, then you need to start building a team behind you. Growing up poor, my dad filed taxes by himself to save money, he was adamant about investing himself and not asking for help, and he was always super proud of it. But as I started meeting more rich people, I realized that they have a totally different mindset. Rich people spare no expense on accountants, lawyers, and financial advisors to do all this stuff for them, so they can just focus on what they're good at, while leaving all the minutia to the experts. But finding the right experts is hard, which is where Money Pickle comes in. Money Pickle allows you to book a free video call with just a few clicks, and then you'll get matched with one of their certified financial planners or fiduciaries who are ready to give you personalized advice on what they would do if they were in your shoes. Trust me, I've tried Googling answers to super specific financial questions before, and it's really stressful. You get conflicting answers, and I can't tell you how many times I would have loved to have been able to jump on a call with someone who could just give me the answers. But now you can with Money Pickle, so click the link below and book a call now. There's a ton of times to choose from, so you're not gonna have trouble finding a time that fits your schedule. Thanks to Money Pickle for being the paid sponsor of this video. Remember Elizabeth Holmes? She was once dubbed the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. But then it turned out that her blood testing company Theranos was a complete lie, and that she has swindled around $700 million from investors in the process.
Elizabeth Holmes.
She founded the startup Theranos.
But Elizabeth Holmes's claims turned out to be a $9 billion fabrication.
It was a scam.
She's a fraudster.
Well, after almost a decade, she recently finally got sentenced for her crimes.
Elizabeth Holmes was sentenced today to 11.25 years in prison. This is her punishment for 4 counts of criminal fraud. In January, a jury found her guilty of defrauding investors in Theranos, the blood testing startup that she ran.
Elizabeth Holmes had made the same mistake as Jordan Belfort. She got caught screwing over rich people instead of the poor.
Elizabeth Holmes lost her final bid to stay out of prison while she appeals her conviction. A court today denied her motion to remain free. It's now up to a judge to decide when Holmes will have to report to prison.
And now she was going to prison for it.
She walked into federal prison in Texas at 1 p.m. today, wearing jeans, a sweatshirt, and sneakers. Inside, Elizabeth Holmes handed over her clothes and got a standard issue prison jumpsuit in return, a uniform she is scheduled to wear for the next 11 years of her life.
Case closed. Justice served, right? Well, not really. Because Elizabeth Holmes didn't go to any ordinary prison that the average pleb would get sent to for possessing weed, for example. Nope, Elizabeth was sent to one of the cushiest, lowest security prison camps in the US, the federal prison camp of Bryan, Texas. Just imagine no barbed wire fences or barred windows to keep the inmates locked up. You have a lower staff to inmate ratio, which means Elizabeth doesn't have to worry about prison guards breathing down her neck all day. Imagine, instead of being surrounded by hardened violent criminals, you're surrounded by other wealthy white-collar offenders who were deemed special enough to serve their time at Bryan. You'll be allowed to wear your wedding band during your stay, and you'll have the opportunity to volunteer, work, or even take classes about things like business skills or foreign languages. And when you're not working, you can play sports, go to religious services, watch TV, or just relax. And every weekend and holiday, you'll be allowed to see your children and family. One attorney said that the Bryan Federal Prison Camp is, quote, like heaven compared to other prisons. It's a tranquil place where you can repay your debt back to society in peace. It's so tranquil that other celebrities have stayed here as well, like how a cast member from The Real Housewives is also serving time for fraud there.
Elizabeth is at the same prison as Jen Shaw from The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. This morning, I spoke to Jen's attorney, Justin Paperny.
Do you think there's a chance that her and Elizabeth will run into each other?
There's a guarantee they're going to run into one another, and there's also going to be an understanding amongst them. So for that reason, I suspect they'll connect, they may become friends.
And guess what? Elizabeth's original sentence has already been reduced.
Theranos founder who was convicted of fraud just had her sentence reduced. Elizabeth Holmes, who was sentenced to 11 and a half years in prison, will now spend just over 9 years in prison.
Celebrities commit crimes just like regular people, but they aren't treated in the same way when they're caught. All the way from the arrest to prison, their entire experience is completely different. First off, celebrities don't have to be in jail most of the time because they can almost always afford the bail amount, while poor people can spend years sitting in jail awaiting a trial if they can't afford their bail. Celebrities are usually hit with way lighter sentences compared to non-famous people. Lindsay Lohan was sentenced to just 1 day in prison for possession of hard drugs and a DUI, but in actuality, she ended up serving exactly 84 minutes before being released.
So she has to go to jail for a day. So just do the day. Just make her serve the day, right? No, of course not. 84 minutes. I mean, you think if your name is what it is rather than Lindsay Lohan and you get 2 DUI convictions and you got cocaine on you both times. I mean, you want to talk about racism? We talked about racism before. Let's say a black guy gets pulled over here in California, here in LA, okay, in South Central, okay, and he's got cocaine on him for the second time and his second DUI conviction. You think he spends 84 minutes in jail? Come on, man. Not in this day and age.
Usually people go to jail for years for these types of charges, and if celebrities ever do serve hard time in prison, they're given crazy privileges, like Room 7021. This is a private suite in the Los Angeles County Jail that's been home to lots of misbehaving celebrities. O.J. Simpson lived there for nearly a year, Robert Downey Jr. spent a few months in that room after a drug conviction, Sean Penn, Kelsey Grammer, and Tommy Lee from the band Motley Crue all enjoyed their stay in Room 7021. And I know it doesn't look like much, but this is the penthouse suite of prisons. It's totally private and bigger than the other dorm-style rooms. It's clean, it has no graffiti, there's a 9x9 window to look out of and get some natural sunlight. The room even has an in-suite sink, toilet, and phone. And the best part is that celebrities never have to interact with all those regular prisoners out in the general population. They don't have to worry about dropping the soap, and they never have to endure the disgusting conditions that the other prisoners are forced to live in the LA County Prison.
That the conditions are deplorable and the inmates are really suffering. Shocking pictures from inside the inmate reception center in downtown LA.
The jail is overflowing. It's full and overflowing.
Inmates chained to chairs, sleeping on concrete floors, dirty toilets, dirty rooms.
I saw a man chained to a chair, but laying down on the concrete floor in a puddle of his own urine.
Today, the ACLU asked a federal judge for an emergency order to improve conditions at the downtown LA facility. Jail overcrowding means the newly arrested are held in the reception center for long periods of time.
But what if you're not famous? What if you just have money? Enter pay-to-stay prisons.
In Southern California, a small number of convicted criminals have the choice of ditching regular jail and opting for an upgrade. The Marshall Project, which covers the U.S. justice system, worked with the Los Angeles Times to investigate pay-to-stay jails. They uncovered a list of alarming cases where rich felons were able to score better digs.
For a simple flat nightly fee, you can avoid all the downsides of prison. And yes, this even works for the most heinous of crimes.
What we did find is that there were a lot of people that participated in these programs, over 3,500, that we could identify in a 5-year period. And the vast majority did it for DUI convictions. That made up 67% of the people who participated. 13% were driving violations. Right. But we did find a small subsection, about 4.5% of people who were convicted of crimes that included violence, threats of violence, or sex crimes.
It has amenities you might find at a hotel. But this is not a retreat, it's a jail.
We've had lawyers, we've had doctors, we've had Catholic priests.
It's called a pay-to-stay jail. And for criminals who have money, there are several dozen that offer a way to avoid the often violent, gang-ridden Los Angeles County Jail.
Take Alan Wurtzel, for example. Alan got charged for forcibly doing stuff to a girl that he went on a few dates with. It was his second time getting charged for the same crime, and now he was gonna face repercussions. So Alan was sentenced to a year in jail. But instead of going to the sketchy county jail, Alan paid $100 a night to go to a nice private jail. That's right, for the price of a cheap hotel, Alan got a clean, safer stay, and it even came with amenities like a real hotel. His room had a brand new bed, the facility had flat screen TVs, and there was even a computer room for Alan to use as he pleased. But that nightly rate does add up quickly. By the time he served 6 months of his year-long sentence, Alan had paid over $18,000 to stay in the upgraded jail. But if you think about it, that's $3K a month, which is about the same price you would pay for a nice apartment in an expensive city. So if you do have the money saved up, it is definitely a no-brainer. As one pay-to-stay inmate who was charged with horrible crimes against a 14-year-old girl put it, in county jail you're verbally abused and physically abused by everybody. I didn't want to spend one day in there. I mean, who does? But since it is pricey, these plushy prisons are usually only occupied by the rich.
So the most expensive is $251. The cheapest one we found was $25 per night. Yes, okay. Per night. But it's typically between about $100 and $150 a night.
One dude got into a freeway car accident while he was drunk, killing one of his passengers, ended up spending $72,000 to do all his time in a private jail. That is $7,000 more than the tuition of Yale University. Now, it may seem unfair that rich people experience a completely different justice system than the poor.
Those who are wealthy are able to upgrade their facilities and stay in nicer jails than those who are poor, who might have committed the same exact crime.
It may seem unfair that you can commit the same exact crime as some other guy, but he gets to play tennis during his sentence, and you have to worry about not dropping the soap in yours.
I get convicted of something, and as part of the plea deal, I say, I'll pay $100 a night. Please don't send me to this more violent facility. Send me to this safer place that they've got empty rooms. So I can see what could be positive about that, but the big negative is it doesn't sound very fair. If you don't have the money, then that's not an option you can take advantage of.
I think that's the question it really raises, is that it's not so much that people can, I mean, obviously the point of the story is that people can pay for a better jail stay, but it raises the question of why do we send people who don't have money into dangerous and often very dirty situations where they might be physically assaulted, they might get very ill. Right. The healthcare is notoriously bad. So I think that's something to think about, you know.
That's because it is unfair.
No, they weren't happy about that. You know, they felt that the person should have gone to a type of jail that they imagined. There was one example in the story in particular of a guy who actually spent a lot of time in jail and prison in his younger years, and he was stabbed by someone, and that person did a pay to stay, and he was just kind of remarking that, you know, I never even knew that existed. That's not something I would have never been able to do because I didn't have the money to even afford an attorney for myself. So that was a really kind of stark example.
But think about it this way. Isn't it nice that there is this other option? That if you really wanted to, you can make more money to ensure that if you do ever get sent to prison, you can afford to stay in one of these nicer prisons? Because let's be real, there is no way American prisons are ever going to be reformed so that all of them are nice and cozy and safe as the ones we went over in this video. So at least now you know that there is this option should you so need it. Because although money will not buy you happiness, it sure can buy you a comfier prison sentence. All the examples we went over in this video are stories of people who had money but did not have influence, so they went to prison. A more comfy prison, but a prison nonetheless. But you want to know who completely shattered this rule? O.J. Simpson. Ah yes, OJ may have had the money, he may have had the cultural influence, but he did not have the kind of influence with the powers that be like what we talked about earlier. And yet he still got acquitted. He never even had to look at the inside of a prison cell. But how? How did OJ get away with murder when there was so much evidence against him? Well, we expose it all in our new documentary on our new channel, How to Get Away With It, that you can watch right now by clicking the card on the screen. And hint, it has to do with how there was a second killer involved in the OJ killings that somehow slipped right underneath the public's consciousness to this day. Click the card on the screen to watch now.